Welcome to Essential Dynamics. I'm your host, Eric Hudson. Really excited to continue our conversation today with Tal Pizzey, CEO of Acuren. Essential Dynamics is a framework that I've been working on that helps us understand the dynamics of organizations. And in particular, one of the things that we're looking for is trying to get systems to flow. So I talk about system dysfunction and system flow. Last time Tal and I talked, he talked about Acuren's incredible progress over many years, and we talked about the importance of just good management. And so today I want to dig in to Tal's systems and understand some of the philosophies and execution that he experienced and was part of and led that allowed Acuren to grow and develop into what it is today. So, Tal, thanks for coming back, first of all.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So one of the things I'm really interested in is how business leaders think about their business, and then how they talk about it and how they talk within their organizations about it. And so in our previous episode, you talked about the three major business lines of Acuren, and I found that very interesting. And how they all fit together. Can you talk a little bit maybe about how you think about and how your organization is set up to deliver value to customers?
Sure. First of all, I mean, the work we do is inherently of value, but others can do that work also. So where is it that we excel is maybe the question. When we put those three service lines together, that is really a differentiated service that isn't matched in the industry. So we have engineers that can help solve problems. So a non-destructive testing technician, for example, they really aren't allowed to render opinions. They do an inspection. They say they take a radiograph of a weld, and they say that weld either conforms or does not conform to an industrial standard. And if it doesn't conform, our customers need to do something about it. And if it's new construction, it's sort of an easy decision. You grind it out and fix it. But if it's an in-service defect, our customer needs to know, do I need to shut my plant down or can I keep running? And our field technicians really aren't of much benefit in that question. But our engineers can now look at the pressure, the temperatures, the materials, the material thicknesses, the information from non-destructive testing, and can make a fitness for service decision to help those customers know what to do. And they might say, look, it's got a good safety factor. If we continue to monitor it, we can wait till the next outage to replace the part. So when these two work together, it's really providing a higher level of value. And then on the rope access side, it's really, maybe back up a little bit. We recognized years ago that, and particularly in the oil sands, that's where it hit us most, acutely, is that our customers are in a competitive market. They're selling commodities on a world price, and the only thing in their control is the cost per barrel of oil. And how can we help them in that journey? And it's, I suppose to some degree you might say, well, you're charging by the hour. So one way you can help them is to, do less work. And that's not the best business strategy. But if it meant, if we could have a risk-based inspection program that would reduce the amount of work they do, I think we're bold enough to help them because we know there's a long-term relationship. But we also found ways to help them that didn't reduce the work we do and it reduced the work others do. But we found that they were spending an enormous amount of money on scaffold. Some of our clients are spending close to 80 million a year on scaffolding. And we can eliminate more than half of that by doing the work off ropes. And that includes the cost of doing the work. We eliminate that total cost, and also the time. time is important to them. If you're on an outage and you're on a critical path project, if you can do that inspection in 4 hours instead of a week, that's big value.
That's big
So,
value.
we look
Yeah.
for these value opportunities to help our customers because we know the work we do is long-term relationship based. And the one thing I did mention in our last episode is that non-destructive testing can be done at point of construction, like a new casting needs to be inspected or a new weld on a pipeline needs to be inspected, or it can be done as maintenance to maintain existing facilities. And because of the recurring nature of maintenance and the less lumpy that work is, we've really focused our business on the maintenance side. And the maintenance side also comes with longer term relationships because on new construction work, you're often working for a general contractor who is different every time. And so we like the relationship. We were like the stability of paychecks for our employees, and we like recurring revenue streams for our investors.
And the other thing that I sense that you would get from that is, well, it's part of the relationship. You get to know the customer. Your people get to know their facility. And every time they go out there, they're building on the knowledge that they have from previous visits. That's got to be better than starting cold every time.
Yeah, 100% right. That provides incumbency advantage on contract renewals and the opportunity to demonstrate value.
So the process of adding value is developing a relationship with the customer. I'm putting words like I'm just putting this out there. Developing a relationship, getting a new customer, and continuing the relationship, and then providing these services that fit together. And do you have do you do a lot of work on standard operating procedures for the actual testing and things that need to be done, and for the failure analysis?
Failure analysis is more sort of bespoke things you do depending on the failure, but certainly the non-destructive testing has, a lot of standards and regulations and work processes to follow.
And some of those would be unique to Acuren and others would be regulated. Is that right? Other levels of standards.
The codes and standards dictate acceptance criteria and what type of tests need to be done. And then our work procedures would indicate how to do it.
And then I suspect there's this different level of standard procedures for rope access.
Yeah, they're focused on safety. So rope access in and of itself is no service. It's just hanging around on a rope. Right. But what you do on the end of the rope is a service. So at the end of the rope, we do painting, coating, insulation removal, asbestos removal, welding, pipe fitting, and inspection. But the focus on ropes is all about working safely and efficiency and the creativity involved in doing things efficiently.
And a lot of times, most situations, they haven't encountered it before. So they have principles by which they can set a rigging up so that it's safe, but they have to do it live every time.
That's right. Yeah. There's equipment standards. There's inspection of equipment. There's, these guys working off ropes use 2 lines on separate anchor points. All of those are well-established rules, and some practices are unique to Acuren and others are part of a worldwide standard called IRATA or SPRAD.
We talked about this emphasis on good customer relationships. We talked about, I'll call it management excellence. When you put it all together, what's the experience like for, let's say, a new employee? And how do you bring them into that, what sounds like a very high level of service and safety and precision?
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, there's lots of training required for these disciplines. A non-destructive testing technician is not very fungible. Like, there's so many disciplines. It's like a plumber is different than a welder and an electrician, and non-destructive testing has radiographers and ultrasonic technicians and about 6 disciplines at different levels. So there's a starting point of a significant amount of training, both in classroom and in the field on the job training. But I think there's also, a broader answer to your question would be, how do you adopt the Acuren culture? And we have a very safety, quality conscious culture. And I think, we certainly benefit from what we talked about last podcast. We benefit from technical people tend to follow rules and be a little bit more black and white. Our safety performance is really outstanding. So, and the reason that's so important, of course, it's important for safety reasons. We want people to come home every night safe, but it's indicative of many other things. It's indicative of people who follow rules. It's indicative of people who follow procedures, who care about the company, care about their coworkers, and look out for each other. So if some of your listeners are aware of injury frequency rate, that's sort of the key safety metric. Ours is 0.15. A lot of industry is at 1. And an injury frequency rate or total recordable injury rate of 1 means essentially that 1 in 100 people have a medical aid or worse per year. So, we're closer to 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 800 people have a medical aid in an entire year. So think about the block you live on. If there's 800 people, if any of those people in an entire year see a doctor for a prescription or have, a back muscle relaxant or a stitch on a finger, you're exceeding the 1 in 800.
Right.
And these are people working at heights, in boilers, in tanks, in vessels, in ditches, in radiation exposure zones. We are in a lot of risky areas, and we don't have safety incidents. So anyway, that's a culture, and that needs to be translated quickly to new employees, and that sort of following rules and standards and codes is what our culture is, and existing employees and supervisors ensure new employees are looked after till they absorb that.
And it's part of your culture to transmit the culture, I guess.
Yeah, that's everybody's job. Look out for each other. Now,
you've made 58 acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of those would have included some kind of cultural integration.
Yeah.
What have you learned from those experiences?
A lot of those, probably more than 40, maybe even 50 of those are regional tuck-ins. So, we have our company, by the way, is divided into US and Canada. There's executive vice president of each country. And then there's 10 regions and about 90 divisions. And those division managers are, managing 100 or 200 employees, and they are responsible. They know the names of the people working for them. They know their customers. And so when we buy a company, it gets, it's kind of like hiring 20 people at once. It gets brought in. Sometimes they have bad habits, or sometimes they have good things we can learn from, for sure. But it's kind of a regional job to take on that responsibility of bringing these employees on and having that oversight. The other bigger deals, for sure, any kind of merger or significant acquisition takes some time to work through and learn from each other and land in the right place.
So I'm hearing two things from you there. One is that you've got this huge emphasis on compliance and safety and customer relations, but then you're open as you bring new people in to if there's anything you don't have that they're bringing to the culture, to the way you operate.
Yeah, just as the word diversity implies, there's opportunity to learn good things and try to prevent bad habits as quick as you can, but a lot of opportunity for getting rid of the bad, but also there's lots to learn from these companies even today with our size.
So your organization has been doing well. Growth, profitability, integration, of these various elements as they come in. New business line. It's not that new anymore, but it was a very interesting addition to your suite of services. If I was to describe system flow as it's not perfection, but everybody kind of knows what their job is, and there's a good level of stress or demand on the system. Things happen, and you know how to respond, and it's the way it needs to be. Would you say that you feel like your organization has experienced or is experiencing that kind of flow as a huge organization? Is that even possible?
Yeah, so I mean, there are different things to talk about on that front. So for sure, the codes and standards and procedures and what to do when you show up on a job site, there's a pretty good structure on that, and there's a real opportunity to be consistent and resilient to dysfunction. But from a business perspective and business development perspective, there are different things at play here. So, we have a lot of discipline around financial performance, for example, and data that supports that. And we recognize with humility that we are a decentralized business. And I think that, MBA 101 would suggest as you get bigger, you want to reduce your cost at the front lines and build kind of scalable infrastructure. But I resist that. And I think that, again, with humility, we recognize that the relationships with the employees and the relationships with the customer occur at the 90 division manager level. And so our effort is in helping to train, develop, set expectations, and incentivize those 90 division managers to be successful and to help pick the right ones, to make changes when you don't have the right ones. There's a lot of great people who are very technical and who do good work, but they're lousy managers of money. And so we just need to make sure we have the right people managing the money. And so we provide them with tools and monthly reviews to look at profitability at the technician or the individual person level, to look at billable hours and utilization, and to teach them what a P&L is. And I think one of the biggest things we did more than 10 years ago is created annual incentive programs for these division managers to grow EBITDA. And most technical people would not know what EBITDA means, so we help them know how their decisions impact EBITDA.
That's what I was looking for. That may not be your total secret sauce, Tal, but you have a system that's focused on the critical point in the organization, which is the division manager, because they have face-to-face with both the employees and the customer. And you're just trying to give them the system and the tools that they can, that they need to operate. And you're giving them the information and the context for making good decisions that fit the whole system.
Yeah. And of all those things you said, 100%, but you got to add incentive and motivation.
Yeah. I guess that was the context that I was
sure.
Is that incentive? And I've seen lots of bad incentive systems. How do you make sure that this one isn't rewarding the wrong behavior or can't get distorted somehow?
Yeah, it's a challenging question. First of all, it's consistent. It's been applied for many years, so there's not newness to it. We have to have controls in place for financial systems and programs and month-end close and accruals. We have those controls in place to prevent any kind of playing with numbers. But these divisions will pay for lawsuits. They'll pay for rework. They'll and they'll be rewarded when they're profitable. And we help them make those decisions that could impact them long term. And so I would say we have a number of controls in place, but the biggest one is hiring good people and setting expectations.
And then giving them the information and the tools that they need
Yeah,
to
on
be
a regular
successful.
basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. I want to bounce to another topic.
Mhm.
There's the system flow, and I'm getting a sense about that from Acuren. Um, Within the system, there are factors that affect the flow, and then there's sort of like sitting on top of the system. So senior management, let's say, is responsible for designing and updating the system as opposed to running it, in a sense. And the critical resource there is the time and attention of people like you. There's not that many of you in a big organization. How do you decide what to spend your time on?
Um, yeah, and I think it's a good question. The of late, you get sort of pulled in different ways. So I feel like there's been almost a year of some distractions that aren't healthy long term. So we hope to get back to some form of normalness. But selling the business takes a lot of time, and becoming a public company takes a lot of time. Investors are now phoning me, and I think my time long term might be better spent with customers than investors. But you got to react to what's needed at the time, and then create the right balance over time. So I think that leadership, whether it's me or others, is best developing the people and the leaders of the company, and also supporting our customers. And so for a company our size, we have a pretty lean sales team because we believe our operations managers are who the customers want to see most. They want to see either technology experts or decision makers. And so we encourage our leaders to be in front of customers on a regular basis and to be connected to our staff, and getting away from the screen. And if we could eliminate computers in offices, we'd like to do that more and more so that our leaders are out in front of the people.
That's fantastic. So Tal, just another question as we wrap up here, and that is, you've had a number of different owners that you've worked with as COO and CEO, and before that. I presume that each of them have had a different corporate governance structure with influence or appointing members of the boards of directors. What are some of the best sources you've had over time for external help, either in a governance role or perhaps even like in more of a guidance role, and maybe those have been combined? But where have you gone outside to get advice for the big decisions that you make?
You would expect someone like me to have a good list of outside, but to be honest, I've been extremely fortunate to have internal leaders that have helped shape, who I am today, but also where the company is today. And so I mentioned 5 different owners. I've learned a lot from each of those owners. The guy, Peter Scannell, who bought the company in 1991, just think about his life for a minute. He bought a company in 1991 that was 3 million revenue. Now, he had some financial backers at the time because he was a very young man. He decided on that day that he would grow this business for 30 years. And he did that, picked us up along the way. He sold the company 30 years later for $890 million, no debt. I learned a lot from that guy.
Yeah.
The guy who just bought us I learned a lot from American Securities, great private equity firm, a lot of structure, a lot of resources, some really good people, had a nice board. I was CEO for 5 years under American Securities, who had a big team, and annual conference with 26 other CEOs, guys running big companies for a long time that I was able to meet and work with. And then this new acquisition, is pretty exciting and interesting. Even though we are public, we were bought by a UK public company that was a shell looking for a great company to buy. And the person who led that company is Sir Martin Franklin, and he's co-chairman of our board now. He's done a few things in his life extremely interesting, lots to learn. He created Restaurant Brands International, bought Burger King and Tim Hortons. He's bought 5 other companies, built some from scratch. I'm learning every day from this team. So, and he talks about private equity as renters and public as owners. It's an interesting sort of thing to think through. But so, yeah, I've been very fortunate, even from my first few years working for the Hanson brothers, and then, the owner of CanSpec and the owner of Rockwood, and then American Securities, and now the new board. So I really haven't had to rely on external forces. For sure, I could tell you about, my dad and my grade 11 math teacher, and, there's some good stuff out there, but from a business perspective, I've been very fortunate with this journey I've been on.
Oh, that's fantastic. And maybe I'll clarify. I need to work on my explanation of this, because part of the model, the way I think about it, is there's a leadership function where the buck stops and people have to make decisions. And good leaders have access to governance. Mm-hmm. And I work with owner managers who don't have that. The board of directors is themselves signing the minute book every year, right?
Yeah.
So to have a structure where you've got an owner, or you've got a board of directors, that's powerful help to a leader. And then from those people and others, there's a difference between governance, which is to say we're not going to approve that budget, and guidance, which is all of the soft stuff about, why aren't you thinking about this? Right. And here's a story about the last time I tried something like that. And I'm sure you got both of those from that list of luminaries that you've been working with. And I think that there's a lot of organizations that don't structurally build that into leadership. And so you passed my test, not that I'm evaluating you here, but that's something that I think a lot of people in any form of leadership, you don't have to be the owner of a company. Mm-hmm. Where do I get my guidance? Where do I get governance? And usually they're not the same place.
So maybe I just add to that one thing that we didn't talk about, is that part of that evolution is the talent within as well. And I could tell you that, the CFO of a $3 million company is a lot different than the CFO of a $1 billion public company. But chief HR officer, we ran this business 20 years without a corporate HR person. But, as we grew, bringing on talent appropriate for the size and complexity of the business has created a lot of outside experts with great contribution to the company's governance and strategy.
If you look at the leadership team that reports to you, do you feel you get both governance and guidance from your direct reports?
I do, yeah, because they are experts in their area, and they are willing to share their opinions with me on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm continuing to learn about that, and I've had the opportunity for a long time with different CEOs to be one of those trusted advisors from the inside, and I learned a lot from the people that I work with. But I feel like from time to time, I might have contributed to the learning of my boss. And
yeah, I'm sure you did.
And you've explained that, I think, very well. So, Tal, I really appreciate your time. I think it was worth waiting for. All the best in your journey as a public company with interested investors, and hope you're able to thread the needle well in terms of keeping them happy and spending your time with your people and your customers, which is where your heart is, I know. Thanks so much, Tal, for
all right. Thank you
for the insight and the wisdom. Bren, thanks very much for keeping us sounding good. I'm Derek Hudson from Unconstrained. Tal is at Acuren, and until next time, consider your quest.